Okay, joining me now is my friend Jason Rubin from Young Turk Sports. Make sure you check out their YouTube channel, TYT Sports. And Jason is at Jason Rubin 9091 on Twitter. Hey, Jason, how's it going, man?
It's good, man. It's great to be on. Thank you so much. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We had a good time chatting about fighting on your guys' channel, so I thought I would bring you back and do it here at Fight Network.
That's great. It's great. We really did. And I think when we were discussing, our preview, we were excited. We weren't sure exactly what to expect. But given what we saw, I think we're both pretty much on the same page after checking out your breakdown.
Yeah, we also were pretty excited about Jones and Cormier, and that was before all hell broke loose.
Right, that's very, very true.
That was a nuts week, man, and you imagine being Daniel Cormier last week. Can you imagine what that guy went through?
It's really a testament to his mental fortitude to go through everything that he's prepared for and then get that news, have possibly two different fighters coming in to take it on 36 hours notice, and then to go in and still fight his game and, of course, come away with the win. It really just it's a testament to him. He didn't deserve to get booed. He deserved to get cheered.
Yeah, I agree. And going through all of that, you're going to be a millionaire. You're losing all your money. You're fighting the best in the world. You don't know who you're fighting. He did all of that while being nutritionally depleted, and this is not a guy who likes to cut weight. So I've done that before. It's a vicious thing to go through, and to have that kind of emotion through it, I agree. They should have cheered that guy, but also, good on Anderson Silva. But before we get too much into 200, I do want to ask you what you thought of Michael McDonald and John Lineker last night.
Well, I mean, for one, I thought for the 5,500 fans at UFC Fight Night, I think it was 91, truly a great card top to bottom. But in terms of McDonald versus Lineker, when we were coming into that fight, it seemed like the strategy we were going to see from Lineker was to pressure him against the cage and really get behind those power punches. And that's pretty much what we saw. Now, McDonald, I thought, actually did a decent job in the very beginning escaping those getting trapped in those corners, getting trapped against that cage, but it just seemed to be too much for him to handle, and really an impressive showing from Lineker.
There was an interesting detail. So I broke down Lineker years ago because when we first saw him, I was looking at power and how he uses up and down. So he loves to throw hooks and uppercuts, make you worry about your head and your body. A very simple strategy, but that simple idea, where are you going? But I realized last night when you looked at it, the nature of the game that he's built actually improves his ability to kind of shoehorn you into that territory he wants you, because hooks by nature block your movement, lateral movement, or threaten it at the very least. So as he's coming towards you and pressuring you, you believe your answer is to move laterally, and you move into the power of those hooks. So just that the nature of how he's assembled that game of forward pressure and being so reliant on hooks, it's just kind of made this really, really cool little individual pressure fighter.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, especially when it comes to the body, because as you just said a second ago, it really was a simple strategy, but you saw how effective and how much wear and tear it did in such a short amount of time. It was explosive. And when you really watch that happen, I mean, McDonald had no choice but to try to get out of those situations as quickly as possible. The only problem was when he was backtracking, Lineker was right there immediately on top of him within a few seconds.
I watched my buddy Michael Bisping and Rashad last night, and they were talking about it, and they're like, he needs to move laterally and get out of there. And it's a really interesting thing if you imagine sort of what he's experiencing. As he's moving that way, that's where the danger is. So suddenly it forces him to kind of choose to plant his feet and drive punches forward. It's just the nature of how that thing has been put together. It sort of forces him to fight his way forward, which would be one of the only ways out. And it's ultimately the way that Lineker wants in the first place. So he's an interesting fighter. Right away, when people see a guy like that, undersized, with a height and reach disadvantage, who has a great fight, there's tons of people saying, I want to see him fight Dominic Cruz. The problem with that game against Dominic Cruz is to hurt somebody with your knuckles, you have to touch them with your knuckles. And I'm not sure, he can get to Cruz. Really, you're not sure most people can get to Cruz. And you certainly will have a hard time getting to Cruz with your feet planted. And that's how this guy fights.
Right, and Lineker is on this 5-fight win streak, and it's impressive what he did against McDonald. Let's not undersell that. But at the same time, as you just said, Dominic Cruz knows how to use his reach, I would say, better than Michael McDonald. Hence why he is so successful. Hence why he currently holds the belt for his division. But so, as you just mentioned, though, being able to touch Dominic Cruz is an entirely different story than being able to get to someone like Michael McDonald. So, in general, I think if this fight were to happen, which would be interesting because, again, John Lineker did put on a hell of a show, and that's something that the UFC, of course, wants to see. However, I'm not sure that same strategy would work against someone like Dominic Cruz, just because I think Cruz is simply too technically gifted. He knows how to use his reach and really create more space. I don't see him getting pinned against the cage too much.
And you also just kind of need to see him fight Dodson anyways. They're
that's,
both
of course,
undersized, explosive guys, and slightly different in how they approach the game. That would be a fun one. But we got another 5 or 6 minutes. Let's hang out a little more, and let's look back at 200. Going into that one, when I came in and chatted with you, my feeling was we had just seen Eddie Alvarez defeat Rafael dos Anjos. Yes. We had recently seen Stipe Miocic defeat Verdum. We had seen Conor McGregor drag Aldo into the space and knock him out. And all these people, over the last number of years, the best coaches, Mark Henry and Henry Hooft and Faraz Sahabi, and all of them were developing games to be able to penalize the pressure fighter for coming forward. And Jose Aldo was the prototypical pressure fighter. And so we expected Frankie Edgar to be the guy moving out on angles, drawing Aldo forward and hitting him. And Aldo literally, like a genius, reminded us he's only 29 years old and came out and literally did the opposite of what probably Frankie and most of us expected.
Yeah, so Jose Aldo put on a spectacularly defensive masterpiece. I was in awe of what I saw from Jose Aldo. It was, as you just said, the complete opposite of what we saw Jose Aldo dominate with for 8, 9, 10 years, the better half of the last decade. And of course, he bounces back from a 13-second knockout from Conor McGregor. That's obviously so far out of his mind when he stepped into the octagon with Frankie Edgar. But nothing Edgar could do, except for a series of a couple of combos that landed inside, was really any bit that effective. Jose Aldo was standing against the cage like Cinderella Man. He wasn't even taking a seat. He was so well conditioned for that fight. He was he was falling away. He was getting better, or something we haven't really seen, although do all that much, was fighting away, opposed to the opposite of going forward. So truthfully, when you watch Edgar and those leg kicks in the beginning, which weren't doing really much, he kind of abandoned that strategy, tried to get inside, get in the pocket a little bit more, but Aldo's power was simply too much to handle, and it looked like Aldo could have gone 5 more rounds if he wanted to.
Yeah, it was really impressive, and some of that power, again, Stipe backing up on Verdum, and even Aldo getting hit like that. Some of the power is when you are driving forward, like the difference between a car hitting you stationary or 2 cars hitting each other, the power is multiplied. And once he got Frankie moving forward, it felt to me like through rounds 1 and 2, Frankie's like, don't worry, I'll get him. And by round 3, he was like, oh my God, this guy's playing a trick on me. This is not what I came to fight. It really, really was absolutely brilliant. There was also, we do some work here with, we do a mentality of combat sports with David Mullins, who's a sports psychology consultant. And we've done some research with a professor of psychology from the University of British Columbia, looking into combat sports psychology over the last couple of years. And a guy like Aldo, he wouldn't have gone into this fight convincing himself that last fight was irrelevant. He went in accepting the truth of that fight and allowing that truth to reshape him so that he learned what could happen if you overspeed, if you drive in too fast. He learned how valuable backing up and striking could be. But he would have had doubts, and he moved towards those doubts, and you saw at the end of round 1, as the doubts started to fall away, he kind of puffed himself up and he strutted back over to his corner with that, yeah, I'm Jose Aldo kind of walk. You could feel the moment where he reminded himself, oh, right, I'm one of the greatest fighters in the world.
Yeah, he's back, and he's back in a totally different fashion, which again, I find so amazing about Jose Aldo, his ability to adapt. This sport is so unpredictable, and mentally it's so different than any other sport, even boxing. And of course, going over to, the footballs and basketballs of the world, it's different when you lose and different when you lose by getting knocked out. So when you come back with an entirely different strategy, an entirely different game plan, and it works so effectively against an opponent that you've already beat by decision, and I know there's a couple out there, some writers who consider that a lot closer of a fight, Frankie Edgar versus Jose Aldo won, even though it went in favor of Aldo. This was decisively in favor of Aldo because it just, again, he came out with such a strong game plan. He was so, again, I can talk about this for days, his conditioning and his takedown defense. I mean, nothing that Edgar could do was even going to come close to putting Aldo on the mat.
Yeah, it was masterful, and we got to remind ourselves, too, that was a better Frankie Edgar. That's an evolved Frankie Edgar. So it really was awesome. We were going to talk about Conor McGregor and Aldo, if that'll happen. First, you got Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, too. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but we're out of time, brother. We're having a good time. Let's get together again. Maybe we'll do it over YTY Sports, TYT? TYT, the Young Turks, baby.
There it is, there it is.
TYT Sports. And thanks so much, man. Let's get together and do this again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Good seeing you, Robin.